this is John Colo with GrowingYourGreens.com. Today we have another exciting episode for you in the garden here in August, answering your guys' questions. You guys do have a question for me you would like me to answer, post it down below in my community tab here on YouTube, and it may appear in next month's Q&A. The weather here is hot. It's been over 100 degrees. Like, I think we're pushing like 70 plus days over 100. But you guys can see my plants are just raging. We got okra here right behind it. We got the Egyptian spinach. We got my basil, my favorite, over there. So many things growing on in my garden. Anyways, let's go ahead and get to your questions today. First question is from Kels884. Love your channel, John. Can you please give some tips on how to grow blueberries in Southern California? I've been struggling trying to keep my plants alive. It's hard to believe that a plant native to North America can be so challenging to grow. Thank you so much. All right, Kel, so yes, the blueberries are native to North America. That being said, they're not native to Los Angeles. They're like native to like the East Coast, like Maine and these kind of things where they got all the blueberries growing. That being said, blueberries can grow in LA, but you need to adjust your practices. I'll be the first one to tell you that I killed blueberry plants. I literally dug up 100-year-old blueberry plants from a farm that was literally going out of business in Sebastopol, California many years ago. I dug up a bunch of these plants and I planted them in my garden because I was a new gardener, and they all died. And I was like, oh, I lost those plants. It sucked. It was a lot of work to dig them up, and I mean, whatever. Anyways, I learned a few things because of that. I think the main thing is I did not pay attention to soil. Blueberry plants love an acid soil. That's the number one thing that is super critical, super important to know. The next thing I will say is that I visited people like in Houston that were actually growing blueberry plants in Houston, which is kind of a more similar climate to LA, and he had some very specialized tips. Number one, he grew them in a container, right? Very important tip. Because you could control the soil pH much better than in the ground. Number two, he was growing very specific cultivars or varieties, right? There are some cultivars that need less chill hours, you know, like if you're in the East Coast, Maine, you're gonna have a lot of chill hours because it snows there. But on the West Coast, we don't get that many chill hours, especially in LA, especially with the climate warming up and whatnot. So you got to get the right varieties that are going to do well for you. So I'm no expert in these things, but what I will tell you is that links down below to a few posts. I think it's like Bright Lane Gardens.com and the Master Gardeners SD or San Diego.org. I'll post two links down below, and if you read what they write, which are basically they're saying acid soil, how to grow them in a container, or if you want to grow them in the ground, I would recommend definitely keeping them in a container as large as possible. And then also, more importantly, get in the right cultivars, and of course get your watering down appropriately, and the plants should thrive. I mean, I grow a lot of plants here in Las Vegas where, you know, they say you can't grow stuff. All my neighbors have backyards with nothing growing. But I've learned that the right cultivars, the right practices are critical for their growth, and then you can be successful. All right, next question is from Rebecca Grinder, 5794. Basil flower storage. I harvested a ton on Saturday and put them in refrigerator to store because I ran out of time to process. Should they still be okay if I process them today, so 3 days later? So the question is, Rebecca, how are you processing? What are you doing? You didn't mention that. So, you know, here's the thing. Like, once you harvest basil flowers or even basil leaves, right, they start to degrade really quickly. It's not a plant that loves to be stored at all, especially in the refrigerator. If you go to buy basil in the store, it always, unless it's the live basil plants, if they're pre-cut, they always look like junk, man. They're just so gross. I mean, it's a summer plant. It's a heat-loving plant. It definitely does not like being stored. So I would say if you do want to try to store your basil flowers, then I would say cut them off and put them in shallow water, like a little tub of water, so they could actually, and then keep them outside the fridge. Don't put them in the fridge, which is probably too cold. Most fridges run like 38 to 40 degrees if you're just using the preset from the manufacturer. You know, one of my fridges is actually set at 50 degrees for storage of warm season crops such as zucchinis and peppers that don't like it too cold, or they could get damaged actually. So I would need to look at your flowers to see, you know, if they're more mature, then they're gonna be more resilient than if they're younger. You know, if you're just processing them into like a vinegar or into packing them in salt or dehydrating them. I mean, if you're dehydrating them, they're going to get so oxidized during dehydration anyways. If you're going to go ahead and freeze dry them, then I would have said you probably should have harvested them and then directly put them in the freezer to then freeze dry them. You know, if you're going to turn them into juice, I don't know. I'd have to see them. You know, if they're like, it depends. Like, you know, here's the thing. Like, if you have a garden, you have tons of basil flowers. Like, I would just ditch those and just harvest new ones. They're putting out flowers all the time. And, you know, like, just, hey, chalk that up to experience. Because, like, for me, if I was, like, harvesting basil flowers, if I'm super, like, usually I'll harvest them and use them right then and there. Because I know they don't last very long, right? In some rare instances, I'm, like, just way too tired. So I might process them. I might put them in the fridge that night. And then the next day, immediately use them. How I usually process my basil flowers are into a watermelon or other juice. Links down below to my video for that. Of course, if you're just putting them in vinegar or oil, you know, processing them the next day probably shouldn't be an issue. But, you know, I think the longer they're cut, and especially in the fridge, they're degrading and you're losing nutrition. But it depends also, you know, at what point, what do you consider bad, right? A loss of nutrition is that bad. If, like, you know, bacteria and stuff are growing on it, that's really bad. You definitely want to throw it out at that point. But I would say after 3 days, they're probably biologically safe, but the nutrition has like literally withered. Some of the nutrition has been withered out of it, you know. So yeah, probably mostly I would say just compost them, harvest new flowers and new basil. They grow fast. All right, next question is from Guy Gooch 3483. I've been a follower of you for over 10 years. We have spoken on the phone a few times to help me with gardening, and I've changed my life for the best with your juicers. But the most helpful thing you have said to all of us is good, better, best. This is my motto and advice to others. Love seeing you grow and mature, and you keep me laughing all the time. Guy, Snowbird in Miami, Florida, and Summers in Northern Georgia. I grow all year. Thank you, Dr. John. All right. So number one, I'm not a doctor. And I appreciate that you look up to me and admire my work so much, and I'm glad that I'm able to make these videos that I do, because a lot of you guys don't know my backstory is that I almost lost my life when I was in my 20s due to spinal meningitis and due to a failing immune system, probably due to a standard American diet as well as other things. So I mean, and the doctors told me I might not make it out of the hospital alive. So I'm like literally just glad to be alive and to be able to like learn a lot to help me and my health out, but also more importantly share with you guys, because you know I really want to be of value on the planet and on the earth to help my fellow man, because I learned in the hospital, even if I had $1 million, which I definitely didn't, you know, I couldn't write the check, Mr. Doctor, $1 million, not valid unless John walks out of here. I thought, man, is money really even important when I'm about to lose my life? No, our health is the most important thing that we own, free and clear, and you can do things to improve your health every day, like grow a garden, like eat fresh foods out of your garden, minimally processed as possible. And of course, you can do things to hurt your health, like smoking, like eating processed foods, like eating junk foods and all these things, right? So, you know, I'm glad to be alive today to share with you guys what worked for me and also to give back, you know, because I am glad to be alive. So, you know, thank you guys that are watching me. You are the reason for my success. All right, next question is from Bobby M. Kearney. What is the best way to germinate moringa from seed and best fig to grow in your opinion? M, thanks. Love the channel. All right. Best fig to grow, in my opinion, I've maybe grown like a dozen different varieties of figs over the years. And actually, I got to be honest with you, my honest favorite is the Janus seedless fig. They are like greenish, like turn yellowish when they're ripe, so the birds like don't see them when they're ripe, so they tend not to get them. Like, you know, black figs or mission figs, for example. The other thing is that they're seedless, so like they really have a really nice texture, and the trees are quite productive. That being said, that's in zone 9A, so I'm not sure exactly where you live. So, you know, if you're not in the right zone, maybe you can't grow those. You know, if you're in a colder zone, you know, you may need to get something like the Chicago Hardy or other cold tolerant variety of fig to grow. And of course, there's probably way more figs that I'm not even aware of. You know, there's dedicated fig channels and fig Facebook groups and these things that you might want to look into, because, you know, I grow mostly cadotas here and they taste good enough for me. They're quite productive and I have more than I could even eat. All right. And then best way to germinate moringa from seed. So to germinate moringa from seed, I would say soak the seeds in warm but not hot water overnight. And then I would say plant the seeds in like a seed starting mix in like one of the seed starting packs with a dome on it, and then put a heat mat underneath it. Right? That way I've literally gotten like almost 100% germination. They really like some heat when germinating. I mean, that's what I'll tell you. I've failed by basically just putting out seeds and digging them into the garden and burying them next to my dripper. Like, that rarely ever works. I did have a seedling come up randomly that just came up, but that's like super rare. So yeah, definitely, you know, moringa can be finicky. They definitely love the heat and the humidity to germinate. And also keep, when you basically plant them the first time, you need to basically water down the soil, and it should stay moist enough in there so that they just germinate without you having to re-water, but you want to check it to make sure it doesn't dry out too much. Next question is from the Garden Gnome. Were you going to purchase the Galaxy purple tomatoes that Rare Seeds was going to sell, and how do you feel about them being GMO seeds? All right, so, you know, that happened very quickly. I was not aware of the Galaxy purple tomatoes that Baker Creek was going to sell until you mentioned that, and then I looked it up. And, you know, they may have been GMO, but they quickly removed them because, of course, Baker Creek Seeds, you know, have signed the GMO seed pledge, so they pledged not to sell GMO seeds. Some of the testing came back inconclusive, although I through hearsay, I heard that some of it may claim it was GMO. I don't really know. That being said, there's a company out there selling straight up GMO seeds that they advertise as GMO seeds. I forget what they're selling them as, but they're deep purple tomato seeds. And yes, I did in fact order them. I put my credit card online, and here's the thing. They never sent me the freaking damn seeds. So while I paid for them, they charged my card. I never got the seeds, never saw them. So all I can say at this point is that I believe they're a scam. They never sent me the seeds, and if I did get the seeds, I'd probably make a video about them, but I probably wouldn't grow them. You know, I guess they're crossed with snapdragons to make them a lot more purple. So, you know, I don't know that we need to be necessarily messing with nature that much to have a purple tomato. Personally, I think through natural and conventional breeding methods, we can get enough different, you know, variations and purple foods. And if you're really wanting some anthocyanins, eat something that's even more purple that have been naturally bred than tomatoes, such as purple carrots. All right, next question from Omar Ewert. I'm moving a lemon basil plant from the pot to the ground. How deep should I bury the roots? The plant is currently about 3.5 feet tall. So let's see. So you want to basically take the plant out of the pot, and then you want to basically plant it in the ground at the same level that it comes out of the pot. You don't want to bury the stem, which is what I would do. Yeah, and then at the same time, you might want to do cuttings off the plant and just put the cuttings in water. They should root, and then you could grow more basil plants that way. But you basically just want to plant that plant at the same soil level. You might want to dig a hole that's maybe twice as deep as the current pot, and then fill it with some good, you know, compost and other amendments such as rock dust and worm castings. All right, next question is from Lindy Simpson 1272. Hi John, I watch a lot of your videos and I'm just so curious why would you give up your beautiful garden in Las Vegas and all the people you know in Vegas to move out to Puerto Rico. Can you share why you would do that, and what is your goal for living out there versus your house in Vegas? Why would you want to move there? Truthfully, John, it's none of my business because I just watch your YouTube, but I'm so curious why. So here's the thing, at present time, I have no intention to move to Puerto Rico, right? I'm developing that property with my friend who does live in Puerto Rico next door. Our goal is to have a retreat center, a farm, permaculture, like food forest, and I'm also going to have like Airbnb and, you know, housing down there. So that's the long-term goal. Is it true I might move there at some point in the future? Yes. You you know, while I do know many people here in Las Vegas and I have my amazing garden here, my garden is just starting in Puerto Rico, and because I have a lot more acreage in Puerto Rico to grow a lot more food, I could be a lot more sustainable and grow even more food than I can here. Yes, it would be sad to give up some of the friendships I've made and people I've seen here. But you know, the other thing is that I love to travel, so you know, I could travel whenever I want. So yeah, so I don't know. I don't like to be tied to any specific one place, and I think there are advantages of growing in different climate zones in different locations, right? There are things I could grow here in Vegas a lot more easily than I could in Puerto Rico, and vice versa. So that's what I'll tell you. Currently, I need to finish the house, which I just emailed the architect like yesterday. And so that's gonna be a time, and then I'll definitely be visiting down there more often when my house is finished down there, and working more on the property, but it might be a long while until I move down there. Now, another reason why I might move there in the future is because although it is a U.S. territory, if you are a resident of Puerto Rico, you no longer pay the IRS. You know, you pay the Puerto Rican government taxes, and there may be significant tax advantages which I need to look into more. Of course, I need to get my residence finished there before I even can do any of that. All right. So next question is from Cheryl Lewis VH4DQ. I have a freeze dryer and have freeze dried moringa. I think there may keep their vitamins longer, not sure. What do you think? So absolutely, I have freeze-dried moringa and I've actually dehydrated moringa, both of them. And I will definitely say that freeze-drying makes a much greener powder, a much more dry powder, and a more nutritious powder. I mean, this is not just me saying this. I've also confirmed in studies where I've seen that, you know, generally between freeze-drying and air drying, freeze-drying keeps a lot more of the beneficial phytochemicals and phytonutrients. That being said, I would encourage you, if you guys do freeze dry, to then store your freeze dried moringa properly. Make it an airtight container, dark, with an oxygen absorber, and pull a vacuum on it. All right, next question is from 3DPEDC. Does TD have a channel or socials that we can follow for more info on him? Where can we find him? So TD's quite an anonymous person. He does appear on my YouTube channel, as well as Josh the Boogie Boy's YouTube channel at Boogie Brew here on YouTube. But as far as I'm aware, he doesn't want to necessarily be in the public spotlight and do updates and all these things. He's just living his life. All right. Oh, and then now we're down to the last question here from Clem24U. How long can Boogie Brew tea sit after making it? So the honest answer is it could sit as long as you want it to sit. That being said, the real question should be, how long should it sit before I use it to have maximum benefit, right? So optimally, you want to brew the tea about 24 hours, and then right as you turn off the bubbler, or maybe even have the bubbler keep running while you're draining it out, you want to take it immediately and pour it on your garden. The reason why is because the longer the tea sits in a non-aerated state, right, the bacterial count is going down, because now the bacteria is not growing as much because now it's no longer being aerated. And especially if you've brewed it 24 hours, that's at the peak of the microbes like flourishing, and they've eaten basically all the food source. And at that point, now the microbial community will go down and be reduced. So definitely you want to just like keep your brewer running, drain it, and then pour that stuff out immediately on your garden. Whether you're going to foil or feed like TD does, whether you're going to soil drench it like I do, definitely want to feed it immediately. Don't let it sit and hang out. Now, if you did let it sit and hang out, then, you know, it is still beneficial to some extent. I mean, you definitely want to smell it. You definitely don't want to let it sit for like a day, maybe overnight, the worst case. But then I'd just keep the brewer running and then brew it extra long and then harvest it and use it. But if it did sit for some reason, then I would pour it on like landscape plants. I wouldn't necessarily use that for my herbs, vegetable crops, or fruit trees. You know, just pour it on your lawn. Your lawn will probably appreciate it because it's better than nothing. But yeah, we want to use the best quality compost tea with the most biologic activity, and for that, don't let it sit. All right, so that's it for this month's Q&A. If you guys enjoyed this month's Q&A, hey, please be sure to give this video a big thumbs up. Also, more importantly, share this with other gardeners that you guys think it can help. Also, be sure to click that subscribe button right down below so you don't miss my new and upcoming episodes. I've come out every 5 to 7 days. You never know or show up what you'll be learning on my YouTube channel. Make sure you click the bell so you get notified as many videos come out. And finally, be sure to check from past episodes. Past episodes are wealth of knowledge. Over 1,700 episodes at this time on this channel dedicated to teach you guys all about how to grow your own food at home. So with that, my name is John Kohler with growingyourgreens.com. We'll see you next time. And until then, remember, keep on growing.